Hey squad, it's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. I really wanted to address this question that I got. Thanks for submitting this question, Austin. But it's around, will the world come in defense or aid of the Uyghurs that are in China? For those that do not know, the Uyghurs are Islamic Turkic population in northwest China, and there's been accusations that the Chinese has done borderline genocidal, done acted in borderline genocidal ways, such as forced sterilization, concentration slash labor slash education camps, as well as a form of ethnic cleansing through demographic shift by moving uh, pure Han Chinese out to the region to try to dilute the potency of the residing Uyghur population. My response to that question of what do I think the world would do, or is the world ever going to try to hold China accountable for their behavior in Northwest China against the Uyghurs, the Xinjiang region? I would say who cares? And what I mean by that is not that people don't care, but who cares enough to do something about it? One of the reasons I don't really get too much in the Uyghur conversation is, let's do the math. First, let's step back and do the math. There's about estimated 11 to 12 million Uyghurs in Northwest China. Now, China's 1.4 billion people. That means that this population makes up less than 1% of their population. So there's not really going to be a military deterrent. There is not going to be a massive uprising. They're basically not strong enough to rise up and create something of their own. Even if they could, they'll be landlocked. Historically speaking, the world just doesn't work this way. This is why so many players. This is why China is so focused on power. That this is not a morality contest. So much of justice depends on who has the guns, who's the judge, and who's the juror, and who's the defendant, and that's why in the plaintiff as well. So I think a lot of the media coverage around the Uyghur situation is kind of how they used to use the Dalai Lama, but of course his credibility has been shocked. But it's kind of how they used to do it in the old days. Ways of trying to prod or gain leverage on China from a moral point of view, because they can't do it from a direct or military force point of view. So there's an old saying, that justice is a question between equals. So if you're not equal, you have to use some other form of leverage. Because if you go to someone and you say bigger and stronger and faster you and say do this, they'll just fling you away. And that's kind of the situation we have with the Uyghur situation. Europe can't exercise any military action against China or force them. Chinese market is massive. And China uses this market to gain influence and access in the world. The Chinese say, look, if you let us play in your field, if you let us get the resources, build some infrastructure, invest some cash, Belt and Road, etc., we'll let you sell to our 1.4 billion people. That's four times the population of the United States. That is a very hard proposition, nearly five times, I mind you, size population of the United States. That's a very hard proposition to turn down. So I just think it's a non-starter, the conversation with the Uyghurs. Historically speaking, where have I saw people step in and really put up a fight? It has to be to the big boys' advantage. I'm thinking about Yugoslavia, the breakup of Yugoslavia. The West wanted to break Yugoslavia up. They wanted some of those countries were had NATO potential, and they proved it. So it allowed West to move in. So it was kind of beneficial to the big boys. The breakup or to the aid of the Uyghurs, who does that really benefit? Cui bono, as the Latin saying goes. Who does it benefit to help the Uyghurs out? But what it does do is it changes the conversation. provides possibly an opportunity of leverage due to lack of other options for the West to say, oh, you don't listen to China, they're bad guys, they do these things to the Uyghur, etc. But the Chinese are moving forward regardless, and I don't think they're going to get hamstrung on this issue. So only possible, I think, mitigation would be if Turkey grows and the region becomes stronger, become more of a player on the world stage. Maybe the Turks can go into China and try to negotiate, because who's also vested in these people? So a lot of that goes back to what I said. Remember, I said, like, who care about you? So they care about you because you help them, you support them, you feed them, you clothe them, you give them energy. You have to give people a reason to need you. And this is just as in life as it is in geopolitics. So who does the Uyghur support? So if it was a population that was very reliant or very strongly connected, let's say, i.e., the Kurds, right? So the Kurds get a lot of opportunities and they get a lot of headways, and they're really making their way and trying to get their own piece of land. But the Kurds are really big allies of the West, and they kind of helps out the West in this contentious Middle East region. So that and the Kurds probably would have their own land right now if it wasn't for the efforts of the Turks. So the Kurds are an example of that. They really try to make themselves an ally of the West and do things to put themselves in a favorable position. I can't think of who I can say the Uyghurs do that for, but they're Turkic people, Central Asia. I'm assuming Turkey. At some stage, they might want to stick up for their Turkic brother and step in and say, China, what can we do about this situation? But other than that, I think this is a small blip. I think the number one reason the people were tried at Nuremberg after World War II, I don't think they were tried at Nuremberg because of their heinous crimes. I think they were tried at Nuremberg because they lost the war. And if they would have won the war, I don't think they would have tried themselves. So, and I think that's the situation here. Is, of course, no one likes to see injustice. The question is, who can stop it? And it's going to have to be somebody powerful. And I just don't see that power originating in the Uyghur community. They don't have a strong diaspora or economic diaspora, as they say, a global diaspora. And I don't see a strong ally that they have that can come in on their behalf. So all the best to the Uyghurs. I hope this answers your questions. Feel free to send a follow-up. But that's my thoughts on the Uyghur situation in China. Take care.